salutations, everybody out there in podcast land. This is the Judo Chop Suey Podcast, and I'm your host, Judo Dave Roman. Thank you all very much for checking out the podcast, and if you're new to this podcast, welcome. I would strongly suggest that if you are new to this podcast, you would start with the more recent episodes and work your way backwards if you wish. I've been getting a lot of messages lately on stuff that I have said on this podcast like maybe 2.5 years ago when I first started. And, you know, it's interesting to me how maybe some of my views and opinions have not necessarily changed, but maybe evolved a little bit. I know I just conversed with somebody this morning about an episode I did over 2 years ago, and he was talking about, you know, some things that he disagreed with what I said, but you know, I had to remind them that when I first started this podcast, I really had an American audience in mind. I was kind of ignorant when I first started out, and it never occurred to me that people outside of this country would actually listen to this thing, and that turns out to be half of you. Half of my downloads come from outside of the United States, so I have had to become, over the past couple of years, more cognizant of that, obviously. So when I cover topics these days, I try and do so from a broad perspective. So with that in mind, on this episode of the Judo Chop Suey Podcast, I'm going to have a guest by the name of James Wall. He is the owner of Wall to Wall Martial Arts in Denham Springs, Louisiana. Now, I know some of you were just thinking, well, Dave, you just said this is going to be a broad perspective. Well, I think a lot of what James is going to talk about is going to apply to anyone running a judo club in the free world. And what I mean by the free world, I'm talking about people that run judo clubs as a business and maybe they don't have any government funding. I do realize that in many, many other countries, judo clubs take place in community centers. They are heavily funded. They are heavily supported. But that's certainly not the case in the United States, and I don't reckon that's the case in other countries like Canada or maybe the UK or Australia. So I think what my guest has to say will apply to anyone that is running a judo club as a business. I think the principles are sound, and I'm really excited to bring him in because James has one of the largest judo clubs in the United States. That is without question. He surmises probably a top 5 club in terms of numbers, and heck, it might be a top 5 club in terms of program as well. So this is one of those must-listen podcasts, especially if you're in the United States, but certainly if you are a club owner anywhere in the world and you're trying to grow your club and you're trying to become a professional judo instructor, this is the podcast, this is the episode that you need to listen to. Now, before I bring James on, I wanted to discuss an article that I just read the other day, written by Gary Goltz. Now, for those of you who are a part of judo in the United States, that name should be very familiar to you because he is known for 3 things in judo. For starters, he's the former president of the USJA. He also had a bit of a beef with Jack Black in a hilarious sketch that was on the Conan O'Brien show several years ago. And he also has an uncanny resemblance to Tony Soprano. And now I know I said 3 things, but he's also been a fixture in judo in the United States for decades, and he's a great sensei. He's a Hachidan, if I'm not mistaken. So the other day he published an article called "What American Judo Leaders Can Learn from the Success of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." Now, it's my understanding that this is an article that's going to appear in the next issue of Black Belt Magazine for the April and May edition of Black Belt Magazine, and I found it very interesting. I don't want to give it away because, well, what I should say is that I'm not going to read the entire article here because I think the article deserves way more time than I can give it on this episode. But what I really like about the article is that he states some of the problems that he sees in judo in the United States, and he offers some corrective action. And granted, it's just a brief highlight of what he feels the corrective action should be. But I gotta tell you, just about everything written in this article are things that I have spoken about and spoken against throughout the course of this podcast that I've been doing over the past 2 years or so. So, just to give some highlights, he discusses some of the issues like judo's focus on juniors and trying to help adults with overcoming the fear of falling. And he also makes an interesting argument about judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu recognizing each other's ranks. Now, I don't know how I feel exactly about that one. However, I know that on this podcast, I have talked about that if you're a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, that in my opinion, you should be fast-tracked in judo to earn higher judo ranks, Q ranks at a much quicker pace than the average adult. And I know that's kind of a point that many will disagree with, but since most of the ways one can win a judo contest happens on the ground, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts are phenomenal on the ground, I think it makes sense that after a short evaluation period, if they are deserving, that maybe you bump them up to Sankyu right away. Obviously it's a case-by-case basis, but I do feel that way. Many jiu-jitsu black belts are going to have a lot of stand-up experience, and while for many of them their stand-up ability may be rudimentary, but a lot of them are not. They're very good on their feet. And again, please, I'm just talking in generalities here. You got to do this kind of thing on a case-by-case basis, but I thought that was an interesting point, and I'm curious to hear what you guys would think about it after you read this article. I'm going to link the article in the show notes, and if you're a subscriber of Black Belt Magazine, I'm almost certain this article is going to appear in the next edition. So read it and let me know what you think. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so at judochopsueyshow@gmail.com. If you want to follow me, you can do so on Instagram at La Vida Judoka. My Instagram is awesome. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is also at La Vida Judoka. My Twitter is not as awesome. And you could also follow me on Facebook. If you search for a Judo Chop Suey Show, you'll be able to find the Facebook page. And that Facebook page is not nearly as awesome as my Instagram or my Twitter. And if you're brave enough, if you want to hunt me down on Facebook and add me as a Facebook friend on my regular Facebook profile, you go right ahead. Just let me know that you are a listener or something like that, because sometimes I get these friend requests from people that we don't have mutual friends, but you're a listener, but I don't know if you're a listener, so I just kind of let the friend request sit there I just let it sit there unresponded. All right, it's time for me to bring on my guest. He is the head sensei at Wall to Wall Martial Arts in Denham Springs, Louisiana, Mr. James Wall. James, welcome to the Judo Chop Suey Podcast. How you doing today?
Doing good, Dave. Doing good. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. It's finally a great. I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for quite some time because we met in person at JudoCon, and I remember when you gave your presentation on running a judo club as a business and as a profession. I remember you said at JudoCon that you felt that was the most important seminar of the entire conference. And I happen to agree with that statement. So I'm really excited to bring you on to discuss really a lot of the points that you talked about at that conference. But I think for a wider judo audience, it's some of the things that you talked about is very important to get out there. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
No problem. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I know you're a busy guy, just like we all are. You got a lot going on, and I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that we appreciate the effort you make to get judo out there, to spread the word a little bit, so to speak, and to support judo. I know you work a full-time job and have a family. I know how that is. It's hard to always get time for passion projects, but it is appreciated.
I appreciate that. So James, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know that you're the head coach at Wall to Wall Martial Arts in Denham Springs, Louisiana. I got that right?
Correct.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your club, what you do, your rank, your experience, all that kind of thing.
Yes, and I'll try to keep it pretty brief. There's really not a whole lot to tell about me. I'm not anything exceptional or outstanding. I was never an elite level athlete or anything like that. Just a normal guy. I started judo. I actually started Aikido before judo, probably back around 1996 or so. 96, 97, somewhere in that area. So 22, 23 years ago. I'm 45 now.
Okay.
At a little school in Baton Rouge called the Gentle Wind Dojo. And they were actually much more of an Aikido dojo than anything else. But they did have a judo program. And the gentleman who was like the number 2 guy there, Gary, who was a 6th dan in Aikido, Tamiki Aikido, but he was also a black belt in judo. And so I started Aikido, did it for a couple of months, and then tried out a judo class and was kind of hooked almost instantly. It just really felt good. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I really enjoyed Aikido, and I continued studying for years. I eventually made it to Sandan in Aikido, and and man, I love Aikido. It's a great martial art, and I actually taught it for many years at our school. But judo really just kind of became my passion. Just kind of really fell in love with that art, and so that kind of became my main focus. But I trained there. It was a small school. They were not a commercial operation. They were in a commercial location, but they didn't run it as a business so much. It was $40 a month. Come and go as you please. Stop anytime. No real marketing or advertising other than like an ad in the yellow pages. But it was a really good group of people. They were great instructors, very passionate and very patient in what they did. I learned a lot there. Gary was not a competitive judoka, but he was a very good technical instructor. He had really good technique and was very patient. But we weren't a competitive school by any means. It was much more just good, traditional, solid judo. So, I stayed there, made it to Sankyu, and about that time, my daughter was maybe around 5.5 or 6 years old. And when I got Sankyu, at the time, the USJA had a coach certification or education course you could do that was all not online, but it was basically kind of correspondence. Read the book, take the test, make lesson plans and things like that, send them in to be evaluated. So I went through that process, got my level, back then they called it level 1 coach or something like that. And once I got that, I asked my sensei for permission to start a kids judo program because we didn't have one there. And I really wanted my daughter to be able to start training judo and thought it'd be something cool we could do together. At that time, I had no plans or desires to ever be a full-time judo instructor. Hadn't even crossed my mind. I just enjoyed doing judo and wanted to share it with my daughter. So I started a kids program there, and we stayed there for many years. My wife eventually started training as well, and we were there for a long time. I think I made it to Sandan, if I'm not mistaken, right before we decided to move and open our own place. Of course, I had to go outside of my school to get promotions. So when I got my black belt in judo, my sensei asked me to also take over the adult program. He had gone back to school to pursue his master's degree and wanted me to take over the adult program. So I was running the adult program and the kids program, and was having a good time doing it. And really, we grew that program. It became much larger than the Aikido side of things there at that school. Just I think because of the energy and just the enthusiasm that we put into it.
Of course. And I remember when you gave the clinic on running a kids class, which I do want to get onto that later on the podcast. Sure. I thought the energy that you and your wife had and your daughter had shown there was really fascinating. You guys were doing things that I had never really seen before at a judo club. So let's back up a little bit. So you are now a full-time judo instructor. That is your profession. If you were to put it on a resume,
yes,
that is what you do. You're not some accountant and you just kind of teach judo on the side. Is that correct?
That's correct. We opened our own school back in 2005. It was just in a metal building in our backyard, about 1,200 square feet, barely any air conditioning, which makes it rough here in Louisiana. And so we taught in our backyard for about 7.5 years, and we slowly grew that program and also added on to that building a few times, which made it interesting because when you've got, 40, 50 people coming to do judo 2 or 3 times a week, and they're all driving basically into your yard.
Right.
So I remember people getting stuck, in my yard and things like that after class and having to, pull them out and things. So we're here in Louisiana. It's kind of a rural area. It rains a lot. So yeah, but about 7 years ago, back in 2012, made the move to being a full-time judo instructor, a full-time martial arts instructor, really. And so, yeah, if I had to fill out a resume or a credit application or anything like that, that's what I am. I'm a full-time martial arts instructor. When people ask me what I do for a living, I'm a martial arts instructor. That's what I do full-time. And Yeah.
So you had a building on your property and that's how you started your judo club. You had a building, and you had, presumably you had mats, and you taught that way for quite a while. So you said 2005. So you taught in that way for quite a while. And so do I got that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. From 2005 to 2012, so 7.5 years, we were in our backyard, pretty much in a garage. Basically, it was a really large garage, but yes.
Gotcha. So how was it? What was your strategy like once you decided to go on this endeavor to teach judo? When did you start the business aspect of it? Because it's one thing to, maybe have a space in your backyard or maybe some mat areas somewhere, but in order to grow a club, you have to do more than just kind of be there. So I want you to kind of take me through maybe some of the things that you had to do, some of the lessons that you had to learn to advertise and to grow your student base. And before we get to that, how many students do you have now that are registered in your club?
So the last count I got from my wife, and of course this goes up and down. It's a constantly in flux. We strive to keep that flux as minimal as possible, of course, but it is up and down. Last time I got a count, because my wife actually is an accountant. That's what her degree is and that's what she's done for many years. So she's the numbers person. She's the brains behind the operation. She keeps track of all the records and the paperwork and the promotions, as well as being a really good instructor. I'm not trying to take away from her skills on the mat, but definitely she's way better than me at the record keeping and keeping everything organized. So last count I got from her, we were at 203. Now that counts all of our students. That's not just judo students, but that we are primarily a judo school. So we have, junior judo, teen adult judo. We also do have a BJJ or jiu-jitsu class. We have a boxing class. We have a ladies fitness class, and we have an Iaido, Japanese sword class.
Okay.
But by far, the two judo programs are the largest that we have. Junior judo makes up about 45% of that 203, and then teen adult judo about another 25 to 30%. So wow. 65 to 70% of our numbers do come from judo, and that's not counting anybody twice, because we do have people that train in judo and jiu-jitsu, or judo and boxing, things like that. But that's not double counting or double dipping. That's just straight numbers of individual students across the board. So just a hair over 200.
That's an incredible number. I only know of one other school personally that it has those kind of numbers, and
Surge
exactly. Mayo Quanchi. Yeah, that's the only other club I've ever heard of with those kind of numbers. So
there could be others out there. I know there are a few other relatively successful programs. I don't personally know of another one that's larger than us, other than maybe Surge up in Rhode Island. It's possible there's somebody out there. I would say we've got to definitely be in the top 5 in the U.S. for sure. And
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the ones I know of that are maybe anywhere close to us, they're not commercial operations, and that's not taking anything away from them. I think anybody doing any kind of judo is a good thing, but it is different. It's different if you're teaching for free at a community center, or for $40 a month at a YMCA or a church gym or something like that. It's a little different. Not that I could go do what those people do. It's a different operation completely. But I don't know of anybody other than Surge that's running the numbers we're running, and that's doing it as a commercial operation, charging I guess kind of a market going type rate and things like that.
Right. So you've got these outstanding numbers, but this stuff probably doesn't just happen organically, in the sense that you just kind of, put up a post here and there and people come. Can you take us through what is it you do to draw? Who's your target students? Who do you advertise to? And what kind of advertising strategies do you do to get people through that door?
Yeah, you're right. It definitely doesn't just happen. And I think, and there's so many things here that we could talk about, and I know we have limited time. I know you heard a lot of this at JudoCon a few months back, but I think one mistake that a lot of martial arts instructors make, particularly judo people for sure, but a lot of others as well, is they are under this, I guess, kind of a misguided belief or perception that if they just become really, really skilled in their martial art of choice, in this case, judo, if they're really good competitors and they get a high level black belt, they can just go and rent a space and just put a sign up, and people are just going to line up, to come in and do judo. And it just doesn't happen like that. I mean, it really, really doesn't. And it took us a long time to figure that out. Even when we opened in our backyard at that time, I still had no plans of doing this full time.
Right.
I was working a full-time job and running the school at night. And basically it was a hobby that paid for itself, and it paid for us to travel to tournaments and seminars and camps and clinics. So it basically supported our judo habit, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then over the years, it just, I started to like it, then I started to love it. And then I really discovered that it was what I wanted to do. It was the only time I was really happy as far as a work environment was when I was on that mat teaching judo. And so then I started trying to figure out, okay, how can I do this? How can I become a full-time judo instructor? And so at the time I started looking around, and I'm like, surely there are people around the country that have figured this out. And so I started going, to camps and seminars and clinics in other states, and trying to seek out judo people that could maybe give me the information I needed, that could share this knowledge with me. And I met a lot of great people, a lot of high-ranking judoka. I went to a lot of good camps and seminars, learned a lot of cool judo. But it was really odd at the time. We were averaging, 40, 45, 50 people pretty consistently.
Sure.
And it's funny because I would go to these sometimes 2-day camps or whatever, and at the time I was like a sandan, and I was surrounded by these 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th dans in some cases, and I'm going there with the hopes of getting this knowledge. Man, these guys are going to have the answers, and it was kind of it was a sobering experience, because when they found out the numbers we had, which weren't that big really at the time, they were asking me for advice. How are you doing this? And I'm not trying to be insulting to those people. I'm really not taking away from them. They knew a lot more judo than I knew. Some of them had been on the mat, as long as I'd been alive. And so I learned a lot of great things, judo wise and technique wise, but it was sobering because I discovered I couldn't find anybody that had the information on how to run a successful program. All I ever heard was, yeah, you'll never make money teaching judo. You can't make a living teaching judo. And we've all kind of been programmed with that in our minds from day one. And so it was sobering, and it really made me kind of stop and reconsider if it was possible or not. And it took me kind of really looking at things from a different perspective. And realizing that I had to look outside of the judo class, and we'll talk about it, and together we'll come up with a decision. And it's not a rank thing. You can't say, yeah, because he's a yellow belt, he's ready to compete. Yeah. Because kids are so different, man. You can't go by that. And so we take a real careful approach to that with our kids. With our adults, it's the same thing. What I tell my adults is that in the adult program, if you're physically able, if you're not injured or don't have a physical condition or age, just physical reasons, if there's not a physical reason that you shouldn't compete, then we would like to see you compete at least once per rank, at least one time. Now, not at white belt, but after yellow belt, we'd like to see you compete at least once per rank. But we don't make them do that, and we do make them track and collect promotion points. You have to earn points to get your next promotion. And one of the quickest ways you can get your points is by competing, but it's not the only way. We make other avenues available: referee training, tech official training, kata, assistant coaching, helping out in kids classes, different things like that. So we make other things available for them to be able to earn their promotion points. But certainly one of the quickest ways to get it is through competition. And so competition for us is just a small part of what we do. And we really try hard to use it as a tool to accomplish a larger goal, which is helping people become stronger and healthier and better able to defend themselves. So yeah, we compete. I would say in a typical year, we're going to host 2 in-house tournaments. We call them training and development tournaments. We do them right there at our school. Those are great for kids and novices.
Yeah, right.
And then we usually host at least one full-size tournament, the LA Open. We've been hosting it now for 15 years. It's a 2-mat tournament. And we hosted Freestyle Nationals for several years there. So there were a couple of years we were hosting two full-size and 2 in-house. And then we'll usually go and participate in 2 or 3 other tournaments kind of in our region. So I would say anywhere from 5 to 8 tournaments a year, depending on the year, depending on if we're hosting 1 tournament or 2 and things like that. So it's not like we don't compete. We do compete, but it's just not our focus. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. I think if you look back, if you read a lot of the stuff that Kano wrote about judo, he put a lot more emphasis on randori than he did shiai. Mm-hmm. And randori is one of the things that really set judo apart when he put it together. And I think randori is a very powerful tool that you can use. I think you can accomplish 95% of your goals for your students as far as confidence and fitness and self-defense. I think you can accomplish about 90% of that with just randori in your school.
And I tend to agree with that. I think a lot of people feel the opposite way about shiai, and I don't know. I especially when you're talking about kids and maybe confidence issues and stuff. I think having a focus on randori, within your club in that kind of environment is better for kids that may have, some self-confidence issues or whatever, rather than throwing them out there in a tournament where everybody is looking at you fail. And that's a big, absolutely. Certainly at certain times of my own life, if I was put in that kind of situation, actually, I have been in those types of situations, not for judo, but in other types of activities. To be the center of focus of failure, you can certainly grow from that, but that's not the ideal way to grow.
No. Like I said, some people can do
personal development.
Yeah, some people can do it, but a lot of people can't. And we talked about this at JudoCon. When we have a parent bring a new student in, or if it's an adult student. We have a very lengthy, health questionnaire release packet they have to fill out. It's like 10 or 11 pages. But, one of the last pages in that, there's some questions on there. And one of those questions is, what are your reasons for looking into martial arts training? And if it's an adult, we're asking that adult, why are you wanting to do this? Obviously, with kids, it's the parent filling it out. So what we're really asking is, okay, mom, why are you bringing your son to martial arts? What are you looking for? Now, a lot of times I've already qualified this if I have spoken to them on the phone or we've exchanged emails or whatever. As part of what I've done, I've already kind of qualified it. But we do occasionally have walk-ins. And we also just want to get it in writing because that way it's something we can refer back to. And we always look at that. My wife's really, really good. She'll check those packets and she'll make note of how that person found out about us, like from Google or Facebook or whatever. And then also, what is that kid looking for, or that parent looking for their kid? Because sometimes it's really, really important. You can gain a lot of information from that really will help you understand how you want to approach introducing this kid to martial arts.
Now, I wanted to follow up what you just said here. Something you said at JudoCon, you kind of mentioned it here. Why is mom important? Why is advertising to mom important? You mentioned that at JudoCon, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that and explain that a little bit for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this one thing you'll see with us is that, or I hope you'll see, and I tried to explain this at the seminar last week, is that everything that we do is for a reason, and it's all sort of tied together. It's a system, and a lot of people come to me in person or contact me on social media or through email or whatever. And they always want to know, well, what's your secret? What's your secret for success? How are you doing it? And I'm not trying to be insulting to those people, but it's almost like they expect a magic bullet. They expect me to be able to give them, a couple of sentences or a one paragraph answer. If you just go do blank, you're going to have 200 students. And it really, really, really doesn't work that way. There is no magic bullet. There is no one thing you have to do. There are dozens of things you have to do. And you probably are not going to be able to do all of those things all at once if you're not doing any of them for now. You can't go from crawling to running a marathon. You have to take it through the steps. But it is very much a systematic approach. Everything we do has a reason, and it all ties in. And it all comes back around to what I've said a couple times. It's about setting your goals and being honest with yourself. And so for us, one of our main goals is we want to be a place of positive development for people, kids and for adults. It just so happens I have a particular soft spot for kids. I've always liked kids. I love working with kids. My daughter is the same way, and she's turned into an amazing junior judo instructor. But you have to I think a lot of people can teach kids, but not many people can really be good at it and really enjoy it. And you got to be honest with yourself about that. So setting those goals and being honest with yourself. So for us, it's about helping people become better. That doesn't mean better competitors. Like I said, competition might be one of the tools we use to get them there. But after all the years we've been doing this, I've never once had a parent come in and put on that paper that they want their kid to be a judo Olympian, or they want their kid to go be a UFC champion, or
right.
That I want my child to be able to fight well. It's never that. But what we get over and over and over and over again is some variation on one of several themes. It's either my child lacks confidence and discipline and focus. It could be one or all of those things. We get the confidence and discipline a lot. Or my child is overweight. They need more physical activity. And usually I've talked to the parent, and the child just wants to sit on the couch and play video games or watch YouTube videos. They're not doing anything physical. Or unfortunately, what we've seen increasingly over the years is bullying. My child just, changed schools, or we just moved here, or my child just went to junior high, or whatever the case may be, and is having a real problem with bullying. And that's a really huge issue these days. And so those are the things that we see over and over and over again with kids. We look at the adult forms. Same thing. We don't have adults coming to us wanting to be UFC champions or BJJ world champions or whatever. What we see from adults usually is, I want to get in better shape. I want to learn how to defend myself better or to defend my family better. I want to relieve stress, things like that. So that's what we're getting from the adults. Occasionally we'll get a young guy or lady that will come in, and they will honestly tell me, I'm hoping to maybe get some training, and I'd like to start doing some cage fighting. We do get that with some young adults every once in a while, and I'm always very polite and professional, but also very honest with them when I tell them that we really are not the school that you're looking for. You're not going to get what you want from us. I can give you the names of a few places, that specialize in that. We don't. Right. And because there's no reason I'm not going to mislead those people. Do I have the knowledge to teach them the grappling skills they need to do that? Yeah, absolutely. But that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. I have no interest in that. So why lie to those people and mislead them? So mom is really important, because I would say 85, maybe 90% of the time, the people that contact us for information on our kids' programs, it's almost always the mom. It's very, very rare that we have a dad contact us. It does happen, but it's very rare. It's usually mom that does it. It's usually mom that's going to talk to me on the phone or email back and forth with me. It's usually mom that's going to bring the child in for their first couple of trial classes. It's usually mom that's going to be bringing them to the classes on a regular basis. And so if mom is the primary one doing all this, then she's the one that we really need to be marketing to. And so for our kids program, we absolutely, we try to market to mothers. That's who we market to. If we happen to get an occasional dad that gets our message as well, that's great. Chances are he's going to say, hey, honey, if you can, I'd like you to, call this guy and get some information on classes, for our son. That's usually what's going to happen. And I don't think that makes people bad dads. I just think that that's the dynamic, that the way that it works out in most households these days in America.
I completely understand that.
Yeah.
So you get the kid, mom brings the kid in, the kid becomes a part of the school. And I know because of JudoCon, you have a lot of different types of games and activities. It's hard for me to describe unless you were actually there at JudoCon, but you gave a demonstration on some of the activities that you do, judo related activities, things that can build on judo skill. You did a lot of fun, different type of things that you have for your kids class. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe explain how you came up with these games? Because I thought they were great. Sure. And that's got to be a selling point for mom as well. She comes in, she brings her son or daughter in there, and you see, instead of kids standing there all somber, bowing and just looking all depressed, they're having a lot of fun, you know?
Yeah. That's a big part of it. That's really important. We teach good martial arts, but we do want the kids to have fun. Whenever I teach coaching seminars, we talk about games, one of the first things I ask the group is, okay, so what is the one thing that every kid wants to do? And everybody, they want to have fun. They want to play games, whatever. It's always fun. That's what kids want to do. And it's the truth. Kids just want to have a good time. So we figured out a long time ago that if you want to get kids in judo and keep them in judo, you need to make it fun. You need to try to disguise as much of the repetition as you can. Because let's face it, a certain amount of learning a martial art of any kind is repetition. You just have to do the numbers. You just have to put the work in doing the techniques.
Of course.
But that gets very boring. I hate doing uchikomis. I hate it. I've always said I hate practicing grip fighting. But I understand if you want to get good at competition, you have to do those things. And so, we have to find ways we can try to make this fun. And the formula that we use is pretty simple. We, after we line up and bow in and get started, we do warm-ups. We make sure that our warm-ups are getting the kids loosened up and warmed up, but it's what a lot of the things we call drills for skills. So a lot of the exercises and drills we do are going to be to help develop specific things that are going to be helping with their martial arts training. Now, any type of exercise is good. Anything you can do is good, and it's all going to help your judo. But, why do 100 jumping jacks when we could maybe instead do what we call goonie birds or pogo races, where we're bouncing on a single leg and I have our other leg raised up behind us because it simulates or mimics doing uchimata, right? Or osotogari. And so finding ways to tie in drills and exercises that more directly relate to grappling, to judo, to grappling martial arts is important. And if you do those things in a lighthearted manner and make them fun and make them a race or a contest, not a competitive hardcore contest, but just a fun contest where everybody's laughing and having a good time, kids are going to like it better. So what you end up with is a 10-minute warm up where the kids are all sweating and breathing hard, but they're all smiling. They're all having a great time. And that's huge, man. That's just so huge because now we're going into the technical portion of class and the kids, they're warmed up and they're ready to go, but they're in a positive frame of mind. They're not bored. They're not miserable. Like you just said, they're fired up. They're kind of excited. They're pumped about it because they just did a lot of fun stuff. Right. And so, we do our technique work and then we're going to do randori, and we do lesson planning, we do lesson cycling. We have our curriculum laid out a whole year in advance. We could have
okay.
we could have a whole podcast on just that. We don't have time, I know, for that.
Yeah.
But again, it's what I said earlier. It's all a system. It all has a reason. So we know we do our lesson plan a month in advance. My daughter now has taken over making the ones for our junior class, and I still do the ones for the adult class. But there's a written lesson plan. And that lesson plan is to get us to the short-term goal of preparing the kids for their promotions at the end of the semester. And so we know what we're teaching. So if we're doing throwing techniques and standing work tonight, we're going to make sure in our warm-ups and drills, we do a lot of things that focus on stand-up work and skills. We're not going to spend 10 minutes doing shrimping and back bridges and things like that if we're then going to be doing throwing techniques, because yeah, it's all good, but wouldn't it be better if the warm-ups more directly related to the skill that they're fixing to work on? So again, there's a reason for everything we do. So warm-ups, technical work, the randori we do that night is also going to tie in. If we just did ground-based warm-ups and ground-based techniques, we're going to do ground randori. And then we're going to end every class with a game, and that game is going to be a ground-based game. So that whole night was focusing on groundwork. And by the end of that night, by the end of that 40-minute class, they've done a lot more repetition of these skills and these movements than they ordinarily would have if we were sort of jumping all over the place. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, you just said something that I wanted to jump on. You said earlier, a few minutes ago, you said that your warm-up's 10 minutes. You just said a 40-minute class. So can you tell me, how long are your classes, and why do you have the classes at that length?
Yes, so that's another thing that, man, I keep saying this a lot. I sound like a really bad guy. That's another mistake that I see a lot of judo, instructors make, is their classes are just way too long. So our junior judo classes are 40 minutes, and we have a 20-minute dead period before the next kids class starts. So there are times we will go over by 3, 4, 5 minutes if we need to, and that's fine. If we won't need to get the work accomplished, we will. But so 40 minutes on paper, sometimes it stretches out to 45. Our adult classes are all 1 hour. They're 60 minutes. And
interesting.
And honestly, and this is just my opinion, if you're running a kids class that's more than 40 or 50 minutes long, you're probably making a mistake, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
And if you're doing more than 40, 45 minutes, what I would say to you then is, okay, tell me about your numbers. How many kids do you have, and what is your retention? How many of those kids have been with you longer than 6 months, longer than 12 months, things like that? And it's almost always really bad numbers. It's always really low. And same thing with adults. I can see the argument with adults for maybe going 1 hour and 15 minutes, maybe even 1 hour and a half. But in all honesty, it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary. And again, when you look at the people running those classes and start looking at their numbers, they're usually not good. So we do 40 minutes for kids, 60 minutes for adults. Now, again, we're not trying to produce elite athletes here. I'm not saying you can do that and make it to the Olympics. Okay,
no,
I'm not saying that. That's
Gotcha.
not what we're doing. What we do, though, is for those kids and adults that are going to compete, we know the tournaments we're going to participate in. My wife and I sit down every December. We plan out our entire next year, month by month. We know the tournaments we're going to participate in. We know when promotions are going to be. We know when we're doing game nights, whatever. It's all planned out. So we know months in advance that we're going to go to this tournament on this date. So about 60 days before that tournament, we will start offering, an extra training class on Saturdays for kids and another one for adults. And we don't charge anything extra for that. It's just there. It's optional. Yeah. And if people want to come in and take advantage of that, then they do. And in those classes, we're going to go longer, we're going to go harder, and we're going to focus on competition work. But that has very, very, very little to do with actually running a successful program. I would say, honestly, it has nothing to do with it. That's really, we do that more as kind of a service for our students. Those few that do really want to compete, we honestly do it for them. We could probably stop that tomorrow, and it would not hurt our numbers, in any way. That's how unimportant it is.
How much do you charge? How much do students pay a month for judo, or really to be a member of your club? Because I know that could include other classes and such.
Yeah, so we for kids up to age 13, we only offer judo. We have junior judo. That's it. So we don't have a kids BJJ program. We only have a teen and adult BJJ. So for a kid to train judo with us, it's $110 per month, $110. And we do family discounts. We do 20% off for a second family member and 30% off for a third. So it's $198 for 2 people, and I think around $177 or so for 3 people. I'm sorry, $277 for 3 people.
Right.
So we kind of have a family max of $300. If everybody in the family, there's 5 people, and they all want to train, we're not going to charge any more than $300. So
okay.
Maybe you have mom and dad that get to train for free or something like that. They have to buy uniforms and pay promotion fees and so forth, but we don't charge them tuition. We have very, very few people that do that, but we have had a few over the years that'll hit that number, and that's fine. We're happy to do it.
Yeah.
So $110 a month, and then a 20% discount or 30% discount. For adults, it's the same rate. If they do judo, it's $110. If they do BJJ, it's $110. If they want to do both of those, we do a discounted rate of $170. So they can do judo and BJJ for $170 a month. And our boxing and our Iaido classes are really just kind of add-on programs. They're only offered once a week. Actually, Iaido's offered twice a week, boxing once a week. And so it's a small rate. You can basically kind of add those on to whatever you're doing. It's like $40 a month for boxing, $60 a month for Iaido. So if you want to do judo and boxing, you pay $110 for judo, you pay $40 for boxing. So now you're at $150. So
now, do you also do because I think you just said belt promotion fees? Do you
Yes.
do belt, do you charge fees for testing and things like that? And I gotta think that might be one of those things where you might have struggled maybe coming to do that, or maybe not. I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about why you charge those fees?
Right. So for years, we pretty much always charged a fee, but for years and years, the fee we charged was just for the national organization. But for us, it was USJA. And
Right.
so we used to do all of our junior promotions and all of our senior promotions through the USJA. And everybody that signed up, when they signed up, a part of their sign-up fee automatically went to buy them a USJA membership. And so, there was a time I had, 110, 120 active USJA members. And I've come to realize now that I was just basically throwing my money away. And I'm not going to go into, I have no issues with the USJA. I think that all the big judo organizations, the big 3, as I call them, they're all about the same. They have a lot of good people that volunteer and do a lot of good work in them. They have some people who are not so good, and there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that are not good. That's in all the organizations.
Of course.
And I think that they're all broken. I think that they all have missed the boat as far as what direction judo should have been taken in 2 or 3 decades ago. But at any rate,
Right.
What we used to do was we charged enough to cover the promotion fee for the national organization and to pay for the belt if they were getting a new belt, right? So we really didn't make any money from that. And now what we do is we charge promotion fees for all junior ranks. We charge promotion fees for all adult ranks in judo. We don't charge for stripe promotions in BJJ. But
Sure.
we do charge when you change belt colors, when you go from, say, white to blue or blue to purple. There is a fee for that. And with all of our programs, judo and BJJ, we use what's called a rotating curriculum, and we run what we call a 4-month semester. And so we're going to have promotion evaluations at the end of the 4th month. Every 4th month, we're going to do promotions. And not everybody will be eligible. There's different criteria for the different programs. But if you're eligible for promotion, you're notified of that in advance. You're told when the promotion evaluation is going to take place. You're told how much the promotion fee is, when the promotion fee is due. And, if you don't get your promotion fee paid, you don't get evaluated. It's a part of our business model. It's a part of what we do. Now, our promotion fees, I don't think are astronomically high. We charge, $25 for kid ranks, when they rank up. And again, that's only 3 times a year. So we're talking $75 in a year's time for your child to do, 3 promotions. And for adults, it's 25 for the novice ranks, and then 35 for the brown belt ranks. And then if you make it to black belt, there's some other fees associated with that, but it's still not much. It's like $100. But from a business perspective, using a rotating curriculum and doing that semester model, what it allows us to do is make our yearly plan. We know when promotion is going to take place, and the promotion fees help us with our revenue. When we talk about the 3 R's, the recruiting and the revenue and the retention. So doing that helps a lot with our revenue. We know, for example, we're going to promote anywhere from 65 to 100 kids. And so that's going to be an extra, whatever, $1,000, $1,200 that's going to come in revenue at the end of that month from junior judo promotions. And for a commercial operation, that's huge. We need to do that. Same thing with our adult program. We can plan for it, and we know we're going to make some extra revenue that month from promotions. So we keep it very affordable for people. We don't gouge people. You're never, ever, ever, ever guaranteed a promotion.
Okay, gotcha.
Ever. And every promotion cycle that rolls around, there are people that we have to tell, kids and adults, that they're not getting promoted. And we have criteria that we set out. For kids, it's the number of classes you attend. It's us observing your behavior and performance of your techniques in class and how you work with other kids. And we send home what's called a permission to promote form. And so the parents and teachers at school have to sign off on the child's behavior. And that ties in with our larger kind of character development program we do with kids. And every semester, never fails, we're going to have at least a couple of kids that permission to promote form is not going to get signed. Either mom or dad is going to have a problem, or one of the teachers at school is going to have a problem. And so it doesn't matter if that kid's made every single class, if they won gold medals in 3 tournaments this cycle, and they can do the techniques blindfolded. If that permission to promote form comes back negative, you're not getting promoted. That's all there is to it. You're not getting promoted until we get word from whoever that was, mom, dad, teacher, whoever, that whatever the problem behavior was, it's been corrected. And then if it's appropriate, we'll test you then. If not, you may have to wait till the next, promotion cycle. With our adults, they have to have the minimum number of classes. We have to see them do the technical work. They have to earn their promotion points. And so this past promotion cycle, we had 2 teenagers. They're great students. They work hard. They're teens. They're at green belt. They were eligible to test for Sankyu. And they're perfect. They're great kids. They're really, really, really good kids. But we sat down and talked, my wife and I and some of the other instructors. They weren't ready. They technically just weren't at the level we wanted to see for brown belt.
Sure.
And we sat down with them and their parents. We explained to them the situation. We made it a positive, not a negative thing. We made sure to compliment them on how well they were doing and how proud we were of them, how important it was that we have to maintain a certain level, with our judo program. And, so, and at the end of the day, everybody understood and was happy. Were they a little disappointed? I'm sure they were.
Right.
But we didn't feel they were ready. Therefore, we didn't test them. So, and we'll reevaluate it, toward the end of this promotion cycle. If we feel they're ready, they'll test for their Sankyu. If we still don't feel they're ready, they're not going to test. So
right.
Again, you got to set those goals and standards, and you got to stick to it. We don't rely on those promotion fees to pay our light bill or our lease. But again, it's great to have that extra revenue coming in, but it's not something we have to do. So I don't ever feel pressure. Oh my God, I need to promote at least 50 kids this cycle to be able to pay the lease or something like that. I can see, kind of like you were saying earlier, I can see how with some instructors you could maybe get yourself into that position if you're not real careful. And so that's one of the things, again, we set as a goal. We're not going to promote people to ranks they don't deserve, and we stand by that. We just reinforce it strictly. So, but yes, we do definitely charge promotion fees. And so using membership agreements, using automated payment systems for your processing monthly, charging promotion fees, and charging a good monthly rate for what you're offering. I think those are 4 areas that if more judo instructors would adopt those things, I think they would probably see, 30-40% growth in their school within the first year, probably, just from doing those things. Everything else has to come down to the way that they market, the way that they recruit, and then their curriculum and the way they run their classes. It's again, there's so many different parts to the recipe. It's a lot of stuff.
I hear you. Well, James, I really appreciate the time you coming on the podcast to talk to really all of us about this. This is most of what you covered at JudoCon, and I thought it was definitely worth listening to again. I'm sure there's a lot of judo instructors and even students that may want to be judo instructors in the future that will benefit from this.
I hope so.
So
what you just said there, I'll just say this in closing. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but what you just said about students wanting to be instructors, I really, really believe one of the keys for judo to survive moving forward, if it's going to survive, I really think that being able to offer the route for people to become full-time judo instructors, that needs to be something that's more realistic for people. We have to get this mentality out of the judo community that, like I said earlier, that you can't make a living teaching judo. You can't make a living teaching judo. We have a lot of really, really skilled and knowledgeable young people that make it to maybe a high brown or even a black belt rank before they go off to college, or maybe they're even in college when they do this, but they never even consider the possibility of running a full-time martial arts or judo program because it's been just beat into their head that you can't make a living doing that. You can't support your family doing that. And I think one of the keys, if we're going to ever turn judo around, I think it has to become acceptable, and not just acceptable, it needs to become realistic, that you can become a full-time martial arts instructor. And I heard Jimmy Pedro do an interview about 5 or 6 years ago, and he said exactly this same thing. And I remember hearing and thinking, man, so this guy's saying it. He's a legend. He's one of the best we've ever produced. He's just awesome, and he's such a great coach. He's produced so many champions. So now Jimmy Pedro's saying it. So surely more people are going to listen to it. Surely they're not going to listen to me. I'm some schmuck from nowhere, but they'll listen to Jimmy Pedro, right? No, not so much. Yeah. And so it's unfortunate, but I really think that needs to be something that happens. And I'm not saying everybody should be a full-time instructor. I'm not saying that. Not everybody should, but it should be an option. It should be something that's encouraged. It should be something that we're helping prepare these people for. I have at least 2 people right now, 2 young people in my school that both right now, as of now, their goal is to one day be full-time judo instructors. Now that may change, but I'm hoping that it doesn't. I hope that they want to move in that direction. I'm hoping that I'll be able to help them do it. I really feel like it's something that we have to embrace that. BJJ has embraced that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
And look at how successful it's being here in America. There's a BJJ school on just about every corner. And I have nothing against BJJ at all. I think it's a great martial art, but judo just has such a powerful moral and ethical message that is just a central focal point. It's what Kano said it was supposed to be. And that's what people are looking for. It's what families are looking for. And if we can embrace teaching full time and keeping the focus on helping people become better people, not just better competitors, I really, really don't see any reason why judo cannot be just as successful as BJJ is as far as growth and numbers. But anyway, that's my spiel. I'm off my soapbox now. I appreciate you taking the time.
Fantastic stuff, James. I really appreciate it once again, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And thank you once again for joining the podcast. Is there any, if anybody wants to reach out to you, is there any social media, email preferences, or anything like that if they want to ask any questions?
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly find us on social media. We're a little more active on Facebook at this point. We do have Instagram and Twitter. Right now, statistically, numerically, more moms are still on Facebook than Instagram, and so that's where we focus most of our attention for marketing and so forth. But you can find us, Wall to Wall Martial Arts on Facebook. We also have a website, wallmartialarts.com, with a contact form there. They can email me, walltowalljudo@gmail.com. I'll do everything I can to help out. Again, they have to be willing to be open-minded and understand it's not an easy fix. I'm nothing special. I'm neither super intelligent nor super athletic or gifted. I'm just a very average guy. So if I can do it, there's no reason other people can't do it. They just have to be willing to open their mind and make a few minor changes in the way they think about doing their judo. So absolutely. And of course, we're doing a lot of good things, are trying with the JBBA coach education program. We're really trying hard to make that a program that's about helping people become better instructors as far as getting and keeping more students. It's not focused on competition. So look up the JBBA on Facebook and our YouTube channel. And if you want to get involved in that, we'd be happy to help.
Awesome stuff, James. Thank you very much. You have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, Dave. You too. Talk to you soon.
Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style.